Big breaking news coming out of Manchester City in the last few seconds, and the moment has finally arrived. After some cryptic tweets this morning from the club, they have now officially announced the signing of Erling Haaland from Borussia Dortmund. There is a statement on the club website that has dropped in the last few minutes, and they simply say this: Manchester City delighted to confirm the signing of Erling Haaland from Borussia Dortmund. The 21-year-old will join the club on the 1st of July after penning a 5-year deal, which will keep him at the Etihad until the summer of 2027, and he's in fine form as well. He scored a couple for Norway in their 3-2 win against Sweden at the weekend. He scored 86 goals in 89 games in 2.5 seasons at his former club, but he is now officially a Manchester City player. Of course, it was just over a month ago that it was confirmed that City had reached an agreement with Borussia Dortmund to sign the Norwegian, but he has now officially arrived, and as I said, a 5-year deal.
Erling Haaland's breakthrough moment came in January 2025 when Manchester City shocked the soccer world with a stunning announcement. The Norwegian striker had just signed a historic 10-year contract extension that would keep him at the Etihad Stadium until 2034, making it the longest deal in Premier League history. But beneath the headlines celebrating his commitment to City, a different story was unfolding about what this massive contract actually contains. The details revealed so far have sparked intense debate across Europe's top clubs, particularly those who spent years pursuing the young sensation. The hidden clause nobody expected: when Haaland first joined Manchester City in 2022 for £51 million, few people realised his contract came with built-in escape routes. Spanish outlet Marca uncovered that his original 5-year deal contained 2 release clauses that could have allowed him to leave under specific circumstances. The first clause would have activated in July 2024 for €200 million, while the second would have kicked in a year later for €175 million. These weren't standard clauses either. They could only be used by clubs outside the Premier League, immediately signaling Real Madrid and Barcelona as the intended targets. The structure reflected the fingerprints of his agent at the time. Teams like Real Madrid were particularly interested given that Karim Benzema was nearing retirement. The mathematics seemed to work in Madrid's favour, as the Norwegian would have been available at a significantly reduced fee compared to his market value. But Manchester City had other plans. Pep Guardiola and the club's leadership were determined to build their future around their young sensation, and they weren't willing to let him slip away to Spain's elite. The contract revolution fast forward to late 2024, and the landscape had shifted dramatically. Rather than allow Haaland to become another stepping stone in his career trajectory, Manchester City made a bold gamble. They offered him a deal that would redefine how long-term player commitments work in modern soccer. The 9.5-year extension would keep him at the club when he turned 34 years old, giving him the chance to spend his entire prime years wearing sky blue. Financial figures surrounding the deal have remained carefully guarded by the club. However, sources close to the negotiations indicate his weekly salary rose from around £400,000 to approximately £500,000 per week. This makes Haaland the highest paid player in Premier League history and likely among the top earners across all professional sports. The total value over the contract's duration could exceed £500 million when bonuses and incentives are factored in. The mystery of the new release clause? Here's where the story gets interesting. Official sources from Manchester City and their affiliates initially claimed that all previous release clauses had been completely removed from Haaland's new agreement. Sky Sports News reported definitively that the deal contained no exit options whatsoever. This seemed to contradict years of negotiating patterns where agents, particularly those representing elite players, fought tooth and nail to maintain some level of control over their clients' futures. Then transfer expert Fabrizio Romano stepped into the conversation. The journalist, known for his insider knowledge of transfer negotiations, offered a different perspective on what he understood to be true about the contract. He confirmed that Haaland did indeed have a release clause embedded somewhere in his new agreement, but clarified that this was not an immediate option. Instead, he suggested the clause would become active from 2029 onward, roughly at the midpoint of his contract duration. This timing is crucial. By 2029, Haaland would be approaching his prime year's end, and the clause would give him a potential exit if circumstances at Manchester City changed dramatically. Romano emphasized that any figure attached to this clause would be very high numbers, making it essentially decorative rather than functional in practical terms. The clause wouldn't tempt rival clubs in the near future, but it provided Haaland with a safety net if his situation deteriorated significantly. The agent's philosophy behind the deal: understanding this contract requires understanding Haaland's representation. His agent Raffaella Pimenta succeeded the legendary Mino Raiola, who shaped many of the most complex player negotiations in modern soccer. Pimenta has been vocal about her philosophy regarding player rights and futures. She frequently emphasizes giving players what she calls the key to the door, meaning the ability to control their own destiny rather than being trapped indefinitely. This philosophy explains the apparent contradiction between the official reports and the reality of the agreement. Manchester City wanted absolute certainty that their investment was protected for the next decade. Haaland's camp wanted assurance that if the situation changed, whether through managerial changes, sporting failure, or other unforeseen circumstances, their client wouldn't be permanently locked in. The solution was a release clause that was high enough to effectively prevent any realistic departure during the contract's first 5 to 7 years, but meaningful enough to preserve player agency. What this means for Real Madrid and Barcelona: the implications of Haaland's new contract sent shockwaves through La Liga's corridors of power. Real Madrid had long targeted the Norwegian as a potential heir to their striking legacy, viewing him as the natural successor to their attacking evolution. Barcelona similarly harbored ambitions of securing his services. Both clubs had factored him into their long-term planning, assuming his ties to Manchester City would eventually loosen. The new deal essentially ended these fantasies for the next several years. Even if the rumored release clause from 2029 exists, the financial demand would be astronomical. Real Madrid and Barcelona, despite their resources, would find it nearly impossible to justify such expenditure for a player in his late 20s. The psychological victory belonged entirely to Manchester City, which had turned a player considered a potential mercenary into a genuine City believer. The bigger picture: Haaland's contract represents a generational shift in how elite clubs secure their top talents. Rather than short, renewable deals that create annual uncertainty, Manchester City opted for unprecedented length combined with elite wages. This strategy accomplishes multiple objectives simultaneously. It locks in a world-class talent for the next decade while spreading the financial impact across multiple years for accounting purposes. It sends a message to the squad that the club believes in sustained success despite ongoing legal challenges. The Norwegian's commitment also reflects his personal evolution. He joined Manchester City as a hungry young talent seeking to establish himself at Europe's highest level. 2.5 years later, he has become one of the sport's most dominant forces, having already rewritten multiple scoring records. His previous ambitions to eventually play in Spain have given way to genuine contentment in Manchester. He has family connections to the city through his father Alfie, who played for City in the early 2000s. He has won multiple trophies, established himself as a Premier League icon, and clearly enjoys the environment Guardiola has created. The secret clauses hidden within Erling Haaland's contracts tell a larger story about modern soccer's complexity. They reveal how elite players and their representatives navigate the balance between security and control, how clubs construct deals to achieve multiple objectives, and how even seemingly definitive announcements often conceal nuanced realities beneath the surface. Haaland's newest agreement likely will keep him at Manchester City for the entirety of his career's most productive years, but the existence of that future release clause proves that even the biggest contracts in soccer history leave room for one final decision. At some distant point in 2029, Haaland may have the genuine option to chart a new course, but by then, Manchester City will have already extracted everything his extraordinary talent can offer.